Let's go! Giants! Let's go!
What is going on, guys? This is the Inside the Booth podcast, episode number 4, as today we are breaking down the New York Giants, and in particular, Daniel Jones. As we have heard the news, I think everyone has heard the news, that it looks like Daniel Jones wants a contract with the number 4 in front of that, and not $4 million. We're talking about $40 million or more dollars per year, and that is insane. When I first heard the news, I thought it was a false claim, but it looks like every day now it looks like that number is increasing, and that's probably what the Giants might have to pay Daniel Jones. And this is really his first good season. He only threw 15 touchdowns, and you know, we've seen what the QBs have been getting recently. We saw that Derek Carr just got $37.5 million per year with the New Orleans Saints, and I thought that was a good deal. You know, I thought 37.5 is a good number for Derek Carr, and that's what I thought, you know, Daniel Jones would be getting. But you know, Joe Shane, it looks to be around $35 to $39 million per year for Daniel Jones. That's what they want to pay him, and I think that's the perfect price for him. I don't want, you know, the market to be absolutely destroyed because of this deal. I think Daniel Jones is worth no more than $39 million, and I think, you know, 35 to 37 is my reasonable price for him. I think he still has a lot to show. You know, obviously we saw what he did this year, and you know, he got us to the playoffs. That's great and all, but only 15 touchdowns, and I know the weapons and everything, but still, if you want to get paid $40 million like what Patrick Mahomes is getting paid, you have to do what Patrick Mahomes is doing, and I haven't seen that out of Daniel Jones. And I'm not saying 5 touchdowns like what, you know, Patrick Mahomes did against the Cardinals, but I would at least like a few more touchdowns. 15 isn't going to cut it. You know, Patrick Mahomes got that 15 touchdowns in, I think, 6 weeks. It only took him 6 weeks to throw 15 touchdowns. It took Daniel Jones 15 touchdowns for the entire year. And you know, I think Daniel Jones has a decent arm. I don't think his arm, you know, is really what the problem is with him. I think he's shown that, you know, he's able to have a good deep ball, and obviously we know he can run for days. You know, I think Brian Daboll has saw that, you know, first when he saw what Daniel Jones can do and watching film. You know, that's one of Daniel Jones' big strong suits, and that's sometimes what you need out of a QB, especially with a struggling O-line. You know, we looked at this O-line and it wasn't great, but you know, your huge bright spot now is Andrew Thomas, and he was, I believe, top 3 in PFF grade, which is great to see from Andrew Thomas, who struggled last year. You know, he was struggling, his feet weren't good, and that's kind of what we saw with Evan Neal this year. But regardless, I mean, what Daniel Jones is asking is not reasonable. We have to, you know, get a reality check and look at ourselves and say, are we really going to pay Daniel Jones $40 million? And that's just not the route to go. You know, and I don't like franchise tagging him either. But, you know, I don't think you're going to get a QB at 25 either. That's going to be what you would like. You know, Anthony Richardson's been a name that's been floating around, but he's not going to drop. And still, he's still a project. You know, I don't think, you know, he's an amazing QB right now. Obviously, he showed at the Combine that he's shown, you know, good deep ball and everything, good speed. I believe he ran a 4.40 40, but he's still a project. You know, I think Anthony Richardson has shown that he can fly and he can throw the ball well, but I don't know if Anthony Richardson's going to be there. And I think if you want him, you're going to have to trade up. And there's just so much going on right now with the Giants. You know, there's still so many holes to fill. Linebacker is a huge need. You know, cornerback number 2, I think, is a need. You know, there's still so many holes, and I think, you know, this whole Daniel Jones thing is hard to look at, you know, with how much he's wanting. And Saquon also, his deal is not close either. So, I mean, I don't know what you really want to do with Saquon, because, you know, there's been that huge trend recently, which I, you know, talked about in the last Giants episode, that you really shouldn't pay running backs. You know, we've seen some of these running backs that have went to the Super Bowl recently. They're not highly paid, you know. And, you know, we also got news that Derrick Henry is getting shopped. I don't think the Giants are going to trade Saquon whatsoever. But, you know, how much are you going to pay Saquon? You know, this was another good year, but one of his only good years. Most of the years he's been injured or limited to games, and that's not what, you know, the Giants need. You know, they need Saquon on the field at all times. But nonetheless, you don't want to lose, you know, Daniel Jones for nothing. But I mean, you know, it's going to be tough. I think right now Daniel Jones has, you know, his ceiling, I think, is a top 15 QB. I don't think he's going to crack the top 10. I don't think, obviously, he's not going to crack the top 5. I think, you know, at best, he could be maybe a top 12. But I don't see Daniel Jones being that top 10 guy. And, you know, if you don't want to pay him, it's really, you know, what type of path do the Giants want to take? I think Joe Schoen wants to get this deal done, but he doesn't want to get it, obviously, for $40 million. Because, you know, Schoen knows, I think Joe Schoen knows it, and Brian Dable know it, that Daniel Jones isn't worth $40 million. And, you know, I know I've been on a huge rant about Daniel Jones, but I'm not wrong. You know, he had decent weapons. Jerry Slayton, who's a UFA right now, I thought he had a good year. Isaiah Hodgins late in the year showed some promise. I thought Daniel Bellinger wasn't bad. But I know his weapons weren't the greatest, but you threw 15 touchdowns regardless, you know. And I know he wants money and he wants good money, but I just think that you need to get him signed, just not for $40 million. But nonetheless, let's get right into the Giants schedule this year, upcoming. So you play a ton of good teams. You know, you have the third hardest schedule in the league, tied with Dallas and New England. Philadelphia is number 1, and the Washington Commanders are ranked 8th. So that's the division. It's not going to be a cakewalk or whatsoever to win this division. And, you know, we haven't had the same division champion since 2004. The last one was the Eagles from 2001 to 2004. So, you know, it's going to be a battle. And I think Philly, honestly, this upcoming year, Philly could very well win it again. You know, with what Philadelphia has done these recent years, I've been really impressed, especially that A.J. Brown trade. That was insane to get him for practically nothing, in my opinion. And he's the top 8 wide receiver in the league, I think. You know, you could say top 10, but I feel like top 8 is a good range for A.J. Brown. And he had a great year. You know, him and Jalen Hurts balled, and even Devontae Smith. They're going to be a great team on these upcoming years, and it's going to be a battle. And, you know, with the Giants, you know, you just got to fill out those holes, I think. And there's a lot of holes, obviously. You have a decent amount of cap space, but it's really what they spend on that cap space. And I think, you know, if you fill those needs, you could, you know, maybe crack a playoff spot next year. But, you know, you're versing a lot of good teams. You obviously play Philly and Dallas twice. So that's 4 games. And you look at last year, you did not beat them at all. You lost by Dallas by 15. You lost by them 7 in one game and 8 in the other. And then you got outscored by Philly at 32. You know, we looked at the game in MetLife. They got destroyed. And then when Philadelphia wasn't playing all of their players, I believe, you know, they only beat them by a few. And that was with Josh Webb playing QB for the Giants, and I believe they only lost by 6 that game. You know, you get outscored by the Vikings by a field goal, and then you lose to the Seahawks by 14. And, you know, what that tells me is, and we'll get into the wins in a second, you know, with those losses, those are all playoff teams. So you do not beat any of those playoff teams. Obviously, you beat the Vikings in the bigger picture in the actual playoffs. You know, you put up 31, and I thought, I didn't see that Giants team all year. I haven't seen them run that Statue of Liberty play. They were just balling. You know, I don't think we've seen that type of performance from the Giants in a while. But nonetheless, it was a really good game, but obviously, when they went into Philly, we didn't expect much except, hopefully a win, and they obviously didn't get the win. But, Philly had a good run until playing the Chiefs. And you look at the wins, they won 9 games. They beat the Bears, they beat the Texans, they beat the Packers, Ravens, Commanders, Titans, Panthers, Jaguars, and Colts. No in particular order, but you look at all those games, and what stands out, only one of those teams you beat was a playoff team, and that was the Jaguars, where you won by a very close score. And that's the other trend about this game, about this season. A lot of those wins were very close. They really, I thought they were more of a second half team. They played better in the second half, and most of the games were pretty much one score. But nonetheless, this team needs improvement. And we went over the free agents last year, but to be totally honest, now we get into the draft soon. I don't really see the Giants paying for a wide receiver unless it's very minor. I don't see them going after Jacoby Myers or another wide receiver. I think they're really just going to address it in the draft. And you look at the draft, Quentin Johnson had a good interview with the Giants, but he's not falling down there. Quentin Johnson is going to be probably the first wide receiver off the board. And also probably, Jackson Smith and Njigba, who I really want. I really hope he comes here, but you're probably going to have to trade up, and I don't think many teams are going to want to move down to 25. And I really wonder, what the market, kind of is, what people are giving up for other picks. And also, if you want my early prediction, I think the Bears are going to trade their first overall pick, and I think that's better for them. Obviously we're not talking about the Bears, but it's going to be an interesting draft on, who goes number 1. Is it going to be Jalen Carter after all those, after that problem that he had? Or is it going to be like a guy like Will Anderson or Bryce Young or, even C.J. Stroud? But, there's been a lot of hype on this Anthony Richardson after having a good combine. But nonetheless, I fully expect Daniel Jones to be the QB next year for the Giants. But I don't know how much he's going to get paid. But nonetheless, it'll be an interesting next year for the Giants. But I have no predictions yet if they're going to make the playoffs. But it really depends on this free agency and thus draft. I hope for a good draft. They got a lot of draft capital, and I really hope we get a good off-season for the Giants. But nonetheless, thank you guys for tuning in. This is your host Vin, and always, so long, and let's go Giants.